If you've watched some of my more recent videos, you'll see me using a frequency spectrum analyzer. So I'd like to talk about that today and what it is we're looking for when we look at these with the charts, the graphs that result in that. I'm going to tell you what I look for, how to interpret those things, and we're going to test the reliability of this thing. So in other words, the frequency spectrogram really shows you changes in volume is what it's really all about, because if this frequency is gone, then there's no volume. And if the frequency is present, then there's a certain volume. If we bring the frequencies up, we're increasing the volume of them. So recording it is fairly volume sensitive. What happens to the graph if I play harder? Okay, because one criticism of this, and it's a valid criticism, this is not a true scientific experiment. If it was a real scientific experiment, it would be a double-blind test where you would hand me something and I wouldn't know what was going on, and I would do this thing. And even furthermore, you would put your guitar into a machine that would strike the string with the exact same force at the exact same place and all that sort of thing, so that you've eliminated as many variables as possible in order to see if there's a difference in frequency change. Is there a frequency change or not? All the variables are out. Well, obviously I can't do that. I don't have a machine to do this and blah, blah, blah. So what we're doing here is pseudoscience. We're doing, like I called it before, seat of the pants science. It's the best we can do given the tools that we have at hand. So one question is this, is how good are we doing here? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this D18, 1937 Authentic, that I'm getting ready to shave the neck down on, and I want to do a before and after comparison of the frequencies. So we're going to get to hear the guitar, but we're also going to look at the frequency spectrums to see if there were any changes in there to verify it. It's one thing to hear the changes, it's another thing to actually see it here on the graph. So again, what I'm using here is just a simple Samsung A9 tablet. I've got it at a consistent distance. It's right next to the mic right now, and I'm making things as consistent as I can. What I'm going to do here now, though, I'm going to play this guitar a little bit, and I'm going to hit each individual string, E, A, B, G, and then what I'm going to do is try to hit. I'm going to hit it 3 times in a row. So I'm going to pick probably each string, but I'm going to hit it 3 times in a row, and we were going to look at the graph and see how consistent those are in between there. Did I, in other words, are there big leaps? All right, or not. Then I'm going to play the string harder. I'm going to play it hard 3 times in a row, and we're going to compare those 3. How consistent was I in that hard force? How consistent was I in my normal force? And how consistent in a soft force? So we are testing my ability to produce a consistent sound, and we are testing the ability of this device to measure that. Before I ever even used this thing, way back when, like I've said before, I used a Telecaster. I put this in front of the amp, and I used the tone knob on the Telecaster. Roll it on, roll it off. That is a guaranteed physical change. There's no question about that. You are changing the tone. And I wanted to see if this device could record that tone, what it looked like on there. And it was very obvious when the tone was all the way up, no roll it off. You could definitely see some highs, some louder spikes in the highs. And when I rolled the tone off, it rolled those highs off so that it was flatter. And I might show you that too if I feel like setting it up. But we're going to work with the acoustic guitar right now. So that's what we're doing here. Is I'm going to show you whether or not this can actually measure tone differences, and how does it look when I play harder or when I play softer. And then I'm going to do a chord too. The chords are a little bit tricky because it's such a big wash of sound. But let's see what a chord looks like on this, okay? So we're going to document this guitar, and then I'm probably going to go out and shave the neck within the next day or so, and then re-record the guitar. But before I do all that, we want to see, is this frequency spectrum analyzer doing its job or not? So, all right, here we go. I'm going to fire this up. We are rolling. All right, here's the frequency of the E string normal. And what you're going to see right here is the first fundamental, and these are upper partials as we go along here. And then they start decaying. So these are actually the upper harmonics that are on top of the note. So this is fascinating stuff. What we're really looking at here is how consistent was I between the three pick strikes. And it looks like I'm pretty consistent. You see about the same amount of fade off right here, same amount of decay on the upper frequencies. So pay attention to that, and then when we look at a harder pick stroke, then you will see some differences there because the volume will come up. I hit it harder, therefore it had more energy put into it. All right, so this looks pretty consistent to me. Now, if you wanted to statistically, numerically analyze this, you would measure the width of this and the height of this, and you could put it into numbers, and then you could do an actual statistical analysis on it. But I can just tell you by the seat of the pants science that there's probably no significant difference in here. In fact, I'm going to pretty much bet the farm on it that there's no significant difference between any of these three samples, which says that my pick stroke is pretty consistent. So now these frequencies up here, I actually don't know how to read all that well, except for the fact that I look for the any spikes or anything. Like there's a spike right here. So this was really useful when we were looking at the effect of pins, bridge pins, and we saw some spikes up in here and some drop-offs that weren't apparent. So this is a linear representation of these. I look at these more than I do these, but these are handy to have. Same thing up here. All right, let's take a look at another one. Here we are looking at the D string with a normal pick attack, and everything looks pretty consistent again there too. Again, there's no statistical difference between my three pick strikes here. So this tells me again that I'm pretty consistent on the picking action. There's this drop off here that's really interesting because here's a frequency in here, and there's this hole right here where nothing is happening. Whether that's because of the microphone or what, I'm not sure. But that's an interesting thing. However, it's consistent. It's in all of them. So that's good enough. That's all I need to know. This is our little E with a normal pick attack. And what you can see here, if you compare this to the low E especially, you can see that there's no low frequencies, and your main frequency starts about right in here and a lot more highs. So again, this is pretty normal. Now, this is a pretty strong E string because these partials up here, these upper harmonics, stay very level across here. So that tells me that this is a strong E string response. There's not a lot of fast decay going on here. All of these upper harmonics stay pretty consistent, and then it drops off up here. Very consistent across the board too. So again, a consistent pick strike. Now on this one, this is the E string hit very softly. And what you can see here is that I did in fact play it softer. you get the same sort of frequencies, but the peaks of them are much lower than when I played it normally. And that's what you would expect from playing the strings softer. So this is what a soft sound looks like. You still have the same strong frequencies in here. They're still very consistent for um, several upper harmonics here, and then they start dropping off here. This is fairly consistent. The first one was probably a little bit, the last one was a little bit stronger because this is the first time I hit it. This is the second time, and then this is the third time, and I got just a little bit more effort in that one. But these two are really consistent, and on the whole, pretty consistent. You might find a statistical difference right here, and it's pretty good, to do multiple attacks of the same note as this one shows you. What you want to do is compare this one to the normal and the hard, and maybe I'll put all three of those together in one graphic and we'll take a look at them. But you can see that, again, that the overall volume is reduced when I played it softly, and that's what you expect. And you see the same thing on the D soft. Again, it's just a drop in the overall volume. I'm not sure what's going on right here with this one that ran through the whole thing. Just one of those artifacts that happen, so ignore it for right now. But you can see again that this is a harmonically rich guitar. The upper harmonics stay very consistent and only drop off when they really hit some high frequencies here. But again, we're looking at how consistent am I. So I'm pretty consistent among pick strikes here. There's the little E played soft, and not a whole lot to say again about that. The upper partials start decaying fairly rapidly because there's not a lot of momentum in the high E string. It's a small string. It's loses its vibrations pretty quickly because there's not mass in it, and so it doesn't sustain. This is where you see sustain. This drops off pretty quickly here, so not a lot of sustain on this one. But again, I'm playing it pretty soft, and you can listen to the recording, and you can see how soft I hit it. So pretty consistent, though. I'm pretty confident in my ability to hit the string with the same amount of force 3 times in a row. This is the low E with quite a bit of force. And you can see then I get more sustain going across it. Pretty good upper harmonics here. The string just basically resonates with more volume, but surprisingly not all that much more than when I played it at normal tone. So when you play it hard, you don't necessarily get a much harder attack. I think there's definitely a point of diminishing returns here. There's a big difference between playing it soft and playing it hard, but when you play it normal and then play it harder, it doesn't really pick up all that much more. But again, I was pretty consistent. These 3 samples look pretty similar. I mean, you can nitpick and say there's a little bit more right here, maybe. You would have to run this into numbers to find anything different, man. They're the same. So once again, when I play hard, I'm pretty consistent on that. So point of all that being is that when I sit down and play the guitar and I play normally, I am pretty confident that I can replicate that amount of force in the pick, and I don't think that my force is going to be a significant, dramatic change in the guitar. I think I'm pretty consistent, especially on a dreadnought with medium gauge strings, This is a soft G chord. It's the same thing as playing the individual notes softly. You just see a decay or a little bit lower volume response. The frequencies across here still stay pretty strong, but then the upper harmonics drop off big time. So it looks from this that when I play softer, that the volume on the upper harmonics is less rich. Yes, the microphone might not be sensitive enough, but the microphone is sensitive enough to pick up responses, and we see a drop off here in the volume. There's no question about that. Pretty consistent between the three of them, though. And as usual, when you play harder, you get more on the upper harmonics right in there. You can get too much just to the point where it starts distorting and becomes a little bit unclear. So when I played it softer, it's probably very clear and very distinct. And this could turn into a sonic roar right into here. Pretty consistent still. So I'm pretty confident in my right hand, at least within categories of soft, normal, and hard. I'm pretty confident in my ability to reproduce that force that I put into the string. And so that makes it useful to compare before and after. So if, for instance, if the G chord normal was the guitar before and something that looked like this was the guitar after, then we could pretty clearly say, yeah, there's a difference in this guitar. The modifications made a pretty significant difference, or a noticeable difference. Significant is a statistical term, um, a numerical statistical term that I probably shouldn't throw around, but a noticeable difference, a significant, actually, significant again, a noticeable difference. There's definitely a noticeable difference between the G chord hard and the G chord medium or normal and then G chord soft. And that's what we're looking for here. Can this little primitive frequency analyzer pick up known differences? So can you see a difference between the G chord hard and the G chord soft? I think it's pretty obvious that you can. Therefore, we can trust this little analyzer um, to detect differences. The dirty way, so I'm going to set the camera again. So we took a look at all this, and I showed you three repetitions with the frequency spectrum thing, and I thought I was pretty consistent on those three. And then you got to take a look at what are the differences between playing soft, playing normal, and playing hard, and you could see what effect that had on the frequency, because that was a volume thing. So, well, I think you got a pretty good idea. You should have a pretty good idea of how to read the frequency spectrum analyses, and we have demonstrated that they can pick up differences in the volumes. So they picked up the difference between playing hard, playing soft, playing normal. Um, you saw definite changes in the frequency. So that's really all we want to do. It's a primitive thing, but it's additional tool in your toolbox so that you can not have to rely on your ears all the time, because you forget what things sounds like, whatever, and people say, "Oh, you forget how it sounds." Well, you can do this quick and dirty spectrum analysis thing, and as long as you have it at the same spot, consistent way, it's the best you can do. It's better than nothing. Okay. All right, we are over and out.